Hello! Well, it's that time. It's time for the full spoiler review for The Flash. I'm back. I'm actually Barbara Gordon. Hopefully we won't have any tech issues for this recording. Cross those fingers, cross those toes. This mic has been giving me trouble, but I'm really hoping that everything behaves itself today. If you have seen my spoiler-free review, then you already have a sense for what I thought of this movie, but I wanted to get into some of the stuff that is spoilery about the story and the characters in it and sort of how they are developed and things that happen that otherwise, it's a spoiler just for what goes on in the movie. So we're going to get into that now. Today, thank you for joining me. I'm going to start off with saying that kind of what I started off with in my previous review, I really do feel like Ezra Miller playing opposite themselves is pretty good, to be honest. And I know that I said this in the previous one, but I do just want to also touch on, hey, this is a spoiler-filled review, and I'm also not going to be getting into as much all of the other controversial stuff surrounding Ezra Miller right now. Honestly, that could be its own video if we want to talk about that. If you want to hear my thoughts on that, let me know in the comments. Maybe I will do a video on it, but for now, I'll just say kind of let's table that as we just focus on the actual contents of this movie. Although, yeah, obviously, elephant in the room, that's a problem. The fact that I think Ezra is even in this movie is a weird thing that's happening. But having seen the movie, I think it makes a little bit of sense once I realized they're having Ezra Miller play Barry Allen, play a younger Barry Allen, and also play another character. So 3 characters in one movie. How are you going to reshoot that? That would be so expensive. So I kind of understand why, but I also feel like we really need to start holding the film industry a little bit more accountable for protecting people that maybe don't deserve to be protected by the industry. However, that is a long historical problem with the film world. So yeah, like I said, that's a topic for another video. I did, however, like a lot of the moments where Barry plays against Barry, and I felt like that was honestly some of the best stuff for Ezra for me, which is impressive because it's not easy to do, to convince me that you are 2 different people who are the same person. And I felt like both Barrys had a very distinctly different sense to them. It felt very real, like there were actually 2 copies of a person in the room. It never at once was anything weird about it, or did it feel off. It always felt very smooth and very well done. So that, I will say, was pretty good. I like that Barry as well in this was his own Reverse Flash. I kind of saw that coming like a little bit, like I got a little bit ahead of that reveal when it came to once sort of Barry got stabbed, and I was already kind of onto it when I was just noticing the fact that young Barry has a different color lightning, which I wasn't sure if that was supposed to just be because it's like, we're in an alternate reality. But if you know me and you know my sort of approach to films, for me, color is always a really big indicator of stuff, guys. I really do think when we see different colors in films that are associated with characters, especially in superhero films, it is very much an indicator of what can be going on. I feel like I called Kang as well in the Loki series. Not that I did that on this channel because I wasn't really making regular content at that time, but that was because of the purple color. And so I was kind of thinking it was either going to connect back to like Infinity Gems, or that it was maybe going to be related to Kang. Kang is traditionally has a lot of purple going on. And I was kind of right about that. So it was very interesting when I noticed the blue lightning. I was like, what does it mean? What is the meaning of the blue lightning? And obviously if they had made it red, it would be too obvious because Reverse Flash gets his powers from the negative speed force. So his lightning is red, and Barry's is usually like an orange or yellow sort of color. And if they made it red, I would have seen it coming a mile away. So I do like that they kind of went with blue, just to kind of, for those of us that are comic book nerds, make us kind of go like, oh, what is going on? And then, oh yeah, of course. But once young Barry had been stabbed here, I realized what was happening, and the fact that Barry was clearly becoming his own villain. And that was who pushed him out of the time stream. And it was very cool that he like made his own, like it's just a paradox. I love I love that he pushed himself out of the time stream to set him on this path so that he could, you know, stop everything bad from happening, and it just like broke the universe. Like, that was a very cool concept, very The Flash, very Flashpoint, and I liked that. And I liked that it was different. Like, I thought that was kind of cool. The main plot and the main sort of plot points were quite interesting to me in this, and I kind of talked a little bit in my non-spoiler review, but Christina Hodson did the script for this movie. I was very excited because she also did the script for Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, and I really did like that movie. I thought it had a really great script, and it was really funny and emotional, and there's just a lot going on. Here, this script had a lot of great broad strokes, I'd say, and some great moments inside it, but there were also some moments that were really weird. There were just moments that felt really cliche, things that people would say, and yeah, I mean, like, there's stuff that's really good and stuff that's just like, oh, interesting. For me, one of those moments that was more weird and it felt like it didn't quite make sense or fit was Barry's doing his homework in young Barry, like when he's a kid, he's doing his homework, and this is on the day that his mom passes away, and he's remembering what his mom said to him about his homework, which he's working on, and he's struggling to find the solution to this math problem. And he's like, I'm trying all these things and I'm really struggling. And his mom basically says, you know, some problems don't have solutions, which ends up being very important at the end of the movie when Barry says that to himself. Older Barry says that to younger Barry to say, like, we can't fix this. This is a finite point in time. We can't save your world. This is what happens. This is what's supposed to happen. I'm sorry that me traveling back in time ever caused this, but also that's just what happens. Some problems don't have a solution. And it's that sort of connection that they both have to their mom that allows them to kind of come together and decide, like, we need to fix this. While initially they were being combative with each other about, you know, young Barry wanting to fix it and sort of older Barry realizing, like, oh, maybe this isn't a thing that we can fix. So it is an important line in terms of what happens in the story and the meaning that it has for Barry, but who says that to a kid doing math homework? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's not very helpful. I feel like most math problems do have solutions. And if they don't have a solution, then I feel like I would actually say to a kid in that moment, like, oh, maybe this problem doesn't have a solution, and the whole point is that you're supposed to convey that to your teacher. I mean, it's not as catchy of a line for the end of the movie, but it just felt like, oh, this is like a cliche thing she's saying to her kid, and it's probably gonna have meaning later, and then of course, ta-da, it did. So there's a few moments like that that just I felt were pretty, you know, cheesy. And, you know, you want to get nuts, let's get nuts. That response that Michael Keaton has, that's a response to a question of basically Barry being like, are you with us, Batman? And Bruce just responds with that. You want to get nuts, let's get nuts. It's like, okay, I'm taking that as a yes, I guess. You're going to join us? Like, it's just a really weird way to respond to that question. You would think, yeah, I'm with you is like kind of how you would respond. Anyways, these are not major things. They're just moments that kind of took me out of the film a little bit because they didn't feel as grounded in reality, which I know is a weird thing to say when we're talking about superhero movies that are fantastical, but what makes them connect with me is those moments that are real. So, yeah. Something that I talked about in my non-spoiler review, I talked about the recasting of Billy Crudup, so I did look that up, and just to go into it a little bit more in case anyone was curious, apparently it was the result of a scheduling conflict. So obviously The Flash was supposed to film earlier, pandemic happened, delayed everything. So obviously the, you know, global situation of the world over the past few years happened, and that delayed shooting. And that actually meant, because Billy Crudup took on an Apple TV show, that he would have to basically bow out of the film from the scheduling conflicts, which obviously is a choice, and I understand wanting to choose a TV series, which is regular work, over a film, which is a one-time project, that especially when you're playing someone like, you know, Barry's dad, it's not like you're the main character of the movie. However, I'm also wondering if that was a choice as well, of Billy Crudup kind of being like, well, I have this other thing, and also I kind of want to just be done with this. I'm curious, but that is the reason that was given to us. So the rest is all speculative. Something that I talked about as well before, and I'm just gonna say it again, this movie is really bright. Like, the contrast in this film is insane. It gets really dark, it gets really bright, all the explosions are blindingly bright. I know I was wearing these colored contacts during the movie, so that sometimes makes my eyes more sensitive, but I wasn't alone in noticing this, and so I just wanted to say, like, if you're going, just anytime there's an explosion, please close your eyes. Don't get, like, blinded like I did. Like, my eyes were watering in the theater, not from any emotional moments, not because I was dying of laughter and crying, just because I was blinded. So, yeah, save your peepers. There were a lot of moments in this, though. Okay, I said we weren't going to talk about the Ezra stuff, but I do want to touch on it really briefly to just say there are some really cringe moments in the script for everything we have heard about Ezra in life. Young Flash going off the wall and getting powers and running around and causing a sort of a ruckus, and then burning up their clothes, and then having to run back into the apartment like naked, and then falling through the floor to a woman's apartment and having to come back up and like have a pan over his business naked. It was that part of it is really weird, is all I'm gonna say, and sits strangely with me given what I have heard now. The other thing I will say is at the beginning, there's a moment where some kids stop and they just yell, a girl yells, "I love you, Flash," and that was weird for me. And Flash also saves a hospital, and after that tells a woman who he saved who's struggling because she just witnessed all this crazy stuff happen and is still processing. He tells the woman that she should seek sort of psychiatric attention because the Justice League isn't very good at that yet. So that was a thing that happened, and that was weird. And there's if there's more moments that you noticed, please feel free to share them with me in the comments. But yeah, there was just a lot of moments that I was like watching it and it like took me out, and I was like, oh gosh, I can't believe they like kept that part in. And I don't know if it's kind of supposed to be a joke. I don't think it's supposed to be a joke. I think it's just in there because it was in the script. I don't think it was added in to make light of any situations. I hope it wasn't, but it's awkward. There's some awkward stuff. I really loved Sasha's Supergirl in this. She is really, really good as Supergirl, but there were some things that were disappointing to me. I really was frustrated when she's like pretty much soon after like coming into the fight and like proving that she's a badass. Basically, she like gets taken out by Zod, who runs her through with like I don't even know. It's not like a sword. It's like a little blade. And I guess because it went through her spine, it like kills her, and then they like drain the blood out of her. So I guess that's why that happens. But it just felt like it was such an easy way to defeat someone that's supposed to be super powerful. And I know that she's probably still not even at full strength because she's been deprived of sunlight for who knows how long, years and years, I'm assuming, on Earth's planet. But it's like, it's just was upsetting, and I felt like that shouldn't have happened. And maybe it makes sense to people, but there were just things like that where I was like, why can't we make her like to live or something, or she gets captured, or I don't know. I didn't want that to be so easy. It felt wrong to me. The other thing I'll say about Supergirl is she has a really amazing scene that I know there's a lot of people out there saying, you know, she didn't really get enough time and it's kind of disappointing to have her in the movie and have her underutilized, which I agree with you. If you're one of those people that thinks that, I agree. However, I will say the scene that she has with Barry when she decides to come back, that scene to me actually really cemented my love of her performance. And although it's not that much that they gave her, she did a lot with the scene. So the scene in question is the one where she basically comes back and she decides to join the fight, and she starts off by asking Barry, you know, why did you save me? Like, you knew I wasn't Kal-El, so why did you rescue me? And he says, well, you needed help. And to me, it was her looking at the TV and then kind of the stuff that isn't even said. She basically says, well, you know, Krypton, like do you know what my symbol means? And then Barry, older Barry, is like, it means hope, and younger Barry says something dumb like Supergirl. And she basically says, yeah, it represents hope, and the planet of Krypton is one of peace. The people are a people of peace. We don't typically fight people and destroy things. Like, that's just not who we are. And so she decides to join the fight. And basically for me, what was left unsaid there is that, like, Zod coming into this planet and destroying it, even though she doesn't have an attachment to Earth in the same way that Clark would, being raised on Earth, and she was like being held prisoner, which is terrible. She sees that Zod is like the last, like, these are the last of the Kryptons that she's probably seeing here. Her and these people. And these people are using their tech and Kryptonian stuff to basically destroy, which is like the opposite of what Kryptonians are supposed to be. And I think to her, it's like, I have to be the one to carry on this belief of hope. I have to help these people because that's what I would do. And even if maybe all of Earth is not great, like, Barry clearly gets it because he saved me and he had no real reason to save me. He just did it because it was the right thing to do. So if I walk away, like, am I any better than Zod? I'm condemning all these people, and that's, like, not the Kryptonian way. Like, I should be trying to help and trying to fight back against someone that's sort of not really representing our culture well. And I just felt like all of that was said with her eyes, and just when she looks at the TV and sort of asks about the symbol, it's all subtext, so it's not anything she says, but I felt that, and I thought, this is gonna be really hard because they've kind of established Supergirl has no reason to be here and to help in this fight. And I believed that. Like, why would she help these people? They kept her prisoner for years. I was glad they addressed that in the movie. And so I didn't know why she would join them. And then when she came back and had that whole scene, I was like, that's so good. Like, with a very tiny scene, you made me believe, yes, Supergirl is gonna help and she's 100% here for this fight, even though it's not her fight. I don't know. It's just crazy to take a character on that ride and move through those steps so quickly in a way that feels genuine. And to me, it felt genuine. I don't know if other people felt that way, but let me know what you thought of that scene in the comments and what you think of my interpretation of sort of the subtext in that scene. I also really loved for Supergirl the scene where she realizes, where it's confessed to her from Zod that they did find Kal-El, but the code that they needed wasn't in his blood. It was in her blood. And she's like, what happened, like, to my cousin? And it's like, that upset, wow, I'm gonna cry. Like, I personally just really felt that idea of, like, Kara's whole purpose was to protect her cousin, her baby cousin, and she failed. And the frustration in her and the sorrow, the grief, the anger at this person for taking her cousin away, her last living family, it's powerful. To me, that was one of the most powerful moments of the movie. The other one being probably near the end when Barry has to go back and he has to take the tomatoes out of the grocery cart because he knows he has to undo everything that's happened. I will say, Ezra did not make me feel as much emotion in this movie as Barry Allen, but that scene, I felt it. We already talked about the CG, but I'm just going to touch on it again. The CG in this, it needs work, and I know that they have said it was a stylistic choice because the way Barry experiences time, it's supposed to show that, like, people kind of look a little wonky because of how he's experiencing, like, time standing still, and it makes people look weird because Barry's moving so fast, but it does not look good. It sounds like a good excuse to be like, we didn't want to put that money in the budget. We already had to reshoot a bunch of stuff. So we cut a bit of the CG budget. The sequence at the beginning with the babies in the hospital that's falling, those babies looked weird. They looked mighty weird, guys. I don't know. That whole scene was weird to me. I was like, this feels awkward. The microwave and I don't know. It was just an awkward sequence. I think it's cool on paper. I think on a script, I'm not saying that I didn't like it as an idea. I don't like the way that it was executed, I think is more my issue with it. Barry also had another creepy moment when Ezra as Barry is saying goodbye to his mom after he puts the tomatoes into the cart before he, goes to go back to the future to see if things have changed and what the world is like and all of that stuff. He basically says, like, don't forget the tomatoes. The way he said it, that's more what it was. It wasn't so much what was being said. It was just like so whispery and like, all right, mom, like, I'll see you in a... It was so creepy and I didn't like it and it made me feel awkward. There's a lot of moments in this. A lot of the stuff with Iris too made me feel really awkward. Also, seeing the multiverse was really cool, but it was also super janky. Nick Cage, Superman, very cool, but very janky CG. Christopher Reeve's Superman, I do think actually looked pretty okay in it for the CG they used there. Kind of was a little bit more fitting. But yeah, there's a lot of like Earths, and that was super cool to see. But some of it looked real weird, and I was like, okay, well, this would be a little better if it looked a little better. Duck also brought up the idea, and I agree with this, that they kind of spent too much time on the multiversal worlds when they should have been focusing on the emotional scene between the three Barrys. Like Barry realizing, like, you know, he's a villain. He started all of this, and now he has to fix it, and he's created this younger alternate version of him that's becoming a villain, and like it's all his fault. Like you would think you'd want to focus on that emotion, but instead we got a lot of worlds, which was cool, but it didn't need to be that in our face. Like, we are comic fans, whether you're a fan that just watches stuff or reads comics. We're all about the little Easter eggs, baby. We love to overanalyze stuff, so you don't have to force feed it. You can just let it exist, little thing, and we will come back and find it all. Like in Across the Spider-Verse, there's a lot of Easter eggs in that, but they don't focus on each one and really take time. There's a few things they flushed out. The rest of it is you just gonna go back and rewatch that like 10 times because of it. So I think that would have been smarter to let them do that. It will be interesting to see how this film changes the DCU, and I am interested to see where it goes. Overall, I gave this movie a 3 out of 5, and thinking back to it, having a few days to have thought about it, I still stand by that. It was entertaining, it was good. I still think it's worth the price of admission. Going to the movies is an awesome experience just in general, and this movie is action-packed and fun and entertaining, so I do think it's worth the price of admission. However, is it something that is going to shotgun the DCU into some new age? No, I don't think it's gonna do that. That's kind of what it was presented as being, so I was disappointed just because that's kind of what it was being claimed to be. I didn't think it was going to be that, though, to be fair. I was skeptical already, but I was kind of like, maybe it will be that. I mean, they've decided to release this movie despite everything, which I think is insane. We're not even getting the Batgirl movie, which they just scrapped it after all spending all that money on it. But they're keeping the Flash because they spent too much money on it. But they're saying, you know, no, it's not just because of that. It's like this movie is like gonna change everything. Didn't really feel like it did that for me. Also, I feel like this was actually a pretty soft Flashpoint. I'm gonna be real. Flashpoint I thought was gonna be like a little bit more like intense, and there are intense moments in this, but I don't know, it just never really feels like this is a multiversal threat, despite the fact that that's established in the film. That's kind of what I got to say. It was multiversal, but was it multiversal enough in a way that felt connected to everything? I guess time, maybe we'll tell. That's it for me on this one, friends. Stay nerdy and let me know in the comments if you've seen the movie and what you think of it yet. All right.